Hey, kids.
Bruno, how nice.
Gee, a customer.
Of yours? Hardly.
How's the flower business?
Well, better than the used book business, I see.
Rare books.
That explains why I so rarely see anyone in here. Are you going to sell me that wonderful painting of yours today?
Are you ready to drop dead today?
Well, really?
Got a minute, Grace?
What's up?
Could you do some research for me?
Sure, what?
Could you see what you can find out about a woman named Malia Getty?
The name Getty sounds familiar. What's your interest in her?
Oh, just, stuff about the Voodoo murders. If you could get an address...
They're murders. Right. I'll see what I can find out. Anything else?
I can't think of anything.
Okay. Well, it's about closing time.
So it is. Good night, Gracie.
Good night, Gabriel. And try not to dream, okay? Good morning. Don't you look swell today? Actually, swollen.
Oh.
So have some. There's a fresh pot on the table. Seriously, you look like hell. Your hair is sticking straight up like a... Oh, it always does that. Never mind.
Ha, ha.
Did you dream about the fire and the hang guy and that lion thing last night?
Leopard, not lion. Did you get anything on Malia Getty?
Well, I did get her address, but you're a little out of your league here, big fella. The Gettys own 3 local hospitals, just to name a few of their assets. They run in very high circles.
Did you get an address?
I got the address. I suppose this has nothing to do with the fact that Malia Getty is incredibly gorgeous. I should have known you wouldn't go for a rich, ugly socialite.
And that address is...
Hey! Far be it from me to postpone your total humiliation. It's 557 West Ingram. That's the Garden District, Estate City.
That's all I wanted to know. And yes, my dear, Malia Getty is the most dangerous-looking diversion I've ever seen. Ouch!
Oy, men.
Today's newspaper is on the counter. Times-Picayune, dated June 19, 1993. A front-page article describes the most recent of the Voodoo murders. Gabriel scans it but learns nothing new. The article reiterates that the Voodoo aspect of the crimes is fake. Gabriel shivers. It looked real enough to him. Elsewhere, there's an article about the history of Jackson Square, called La Plaza d'Armas. Under French rule, it was used for executions, firing squads, hanging, even impalement and breaking on the wheel. Yikes! Of course, these days it's mostly a hangout for tourists, street musicians and local artists. Gabriel also scans the Aquarius horoscope for the day. Chances of a dark star rising on this day. Do not trust your instincts.
I feel a dark star rising, all right. Got a minute, Grace?
What's up?
Do you have messages for me?
Nope. None right now.
See you later.
See ya.
There's a photocopy machine in the office area. The electrician has left his tools behind. He must plan on returning. There's a temperature gauge on the wall near Mosley's office. The security cage has been removed by the electrician.
Got a second, officer?
What can I do you for?
I'm here to see Detective Mosley.
He's in his office. Go on back.
Hey, Mostly.
It's you, God help me. Dang, the air conditioning must be on the blink. Are you hot? Man, I'm hot.
Can I ask you about some stuff?
You're the writer. Ask away.
How about getting me some coffee?
What am I, your slave?
Hey, I'm working my butt off here.
Yeah, fine. Some people are never satisfied.
I think I'll just borrow this badge.
Hey, what are you doing with my coat?
Nothing. I thought I saw something crawling on it.
Just drink this.
Thanks. Tons. I mean it. Can I ask you about some stuff?
You're the writer. Ask away.
What's the status on the Voodoo murders case?
You're as filled in as me.
Have you ever called the hair club for men?
I'd rather have no hair than your hair, Knight.
Do you have any idea what Cabri sans coeur means?
Hell no. Is that French? My mother spoke it, but I always had a hard enough time just speaking English.
True enough. What can you tell me about St. John's Eve?
That's coming up, isn't it? We get some occasional weirdness in the quarter, but nothing much. Used to have a lot of strange things happen, though, or so I hear.
I'm gonna hit the road.
Have a good one.
People seem to be enjoying the park, despite the lack of sunshine. The juggler looks like a beginner practicing his act. An artist is taking advantage of the fine weather.
Could I ask you some questions?
I'd rather not. I really get focused when I'm drawing.
Okay, fine.
A Cajun band, inventive as always with their instruments, is having a good old time on the lawn.
Hey, come back here. Hey! Oh, unbelievable. Rotten luck.
There's her drawing caught up against the hedges. Gabriel can't reach the drawing from where he is. That jazz band is pretty good. Of course, most jazz bands in New Orleans are. A small boy is tap dancing enthusiastically for a lucky dog vendor. The vendor ignores him. The lucky dog vendor has his nose buried in a paperback novel. Gabriel noticed that it is not. Big surprise. Interrogating the little boy wouldn't be very useful.
Do you mind if I ask you a few questions?
Yep, I mind all right.
Why?
Because A, I don't know anything, and B, I'm busy.
Oh. Could I get a lucky dog, please?
Not now, I'm busy.
An unambitious person? In the 90s? Ah, amazing.
I have this gift certificate.
I'm busy.
It's good for $20 at St. George's Books, finest bookstore in New Orleans.
Really? I'll have to check it out sometime.
You could take this gift certificate with you, if you'll give me a lucky dog.
A lucky dog for a $20 gift certificate? Well, sure. Here you go.
You wouldn't like a lucky dog by any chance.
Would I? Thanks, mister. You got any special requests? Let me know.
You mentioned something about special requests.
Yeah. You got one?
Can you fit through the bars around the statue?
Can I? Just watch me.
Good. There's something in there I can't quite reach. Come on. Can you reach that piece of paper?
Sure thing. Here you go. Yep. See ya.
It's a technical drawing of Saint Louis Cathedral. There's nothing written on the drawing.
This belongs to you, doesn't it?
My drawing. How'd you get it?
Oh, it was a bit of a squeeze, but I hate to see you lose your work. I lost my only copy of a manuscript once.
Well, you saved my butt. Let me know if I can ever do the same for you, huh?
Say, do you think there's anything you can do with these patterns?
What do you need?
Is there any way you can reconstruct the whole pattern from these partials?
Pattern is probably circular, and there's some repetition in the elements. What is this from, anyway?
You'd never believe me.
Okie dokie. Well, there's... I think there's an area missing. If you could get me any more of these...
I'll see what I can do. I have another one of those patterns.
Really? Let's see. Yeah, this is great. I think there's enough overlap now. I'll give it my best shot. I'll show you what I come up with tomorrow.
Great. I appreciate it.
The Garden District is famous for its elaborate old plantation homes and mansions. This particular mansion is impeccably groomed. The huge trees bear beards of Spanish moss. The Garden District is famous for its elaborate old...
May I help you? I'd like to see Malia Getty, please. I'm sorry, but unless you have an appointment or official business, I cannot announce you. I do have official business. Really? Please tell me the nature of your business. My name is Detective Mosley. I'm here on police business. Really? How interesting. Wait here. I'll inform Miss Getty. Miss Getty will see you. Right this way. Miss Getty will be down shortly. Thank you.
What can I do for you, Detective?
undoubtedly proof that there is a God. Mind if I ask you a few questions, Miss Getty?
I assume that's what you're here for, Detective.
What can you tell me about voodoo?
Voodoo? Why would you want to know about that, Detective? It's rather silly, isn't it?
There's nothing silly about the voodoo murders.
But that voodoo is faked. That's what I've read in the papers.
That's what the papers say, all right.
But you're not convinced?
No, frankly, I'm not. The police department isn't known for its imagination.
Oh. Well, I can see that your imagination is considerable.
Are you sure you can't tell me anything about voodoo?
I really don't know much about it. Isn't there some place in town that you can find out about that sort of thing? A museum or something?
I believe there is a museum.
Then maybe you should check there.
What do you know about the voodoo murders?
The murders? Only what I read in the papers.
And what do you read in the papers?
I'm sure you know much more about it than I, Detective.
Tell me about your life in New Orleans.
The Getty family came to New Orleans in 1800. We worked very hard to get where we are. On the other hand, we've done a lot for this community.
I can believe that. You're doing a lot for me right now. Tell me more about New Orleans.
I'm afraid I don't get out into New Orleans society much. Because of the Getty money, we have slots in the best country clubs and on the best Mardi Gras courts. But I must admit, I hate it. I avoid actually making an appearance unless it becomes absolutely necessary.
I know about those courts. They're very exclusive.
Yes, especially when it comes to people of my race. That's why we don't turn down the appointments. It's a rare opportunity to rub their noses in it. But that's not where I spend my time. I have more important things to do with my life.
That's admirable. Many women would love the chance to get caught up in that kind of life.
I'm not any kind of woman you might be familiar with.
Yes, I can see that. Tell me more about New Orleans.
I don't know what else you want to hear, Detective. Anything you might care to know about my public life you can easily look up in the papers.
Do you know anything about snakes?
I'm afraid I quite abhor them.
What can you tell me about St. John's Eve?
I believe it's some sort of local holiday, but I don't know much about it.
Do you have any idea what Cabri Saint-Gare means?
No, I don't. What does it mean, Detective?
That's confidential information, ma'am. Have you ever heard of a Schottenjäger?
No, I'm afraid I can't help you with that, Detective.
Tell me about yourself.
I suppose I don't really have a choice. What do you want to know, Detective?
What kind of things interest you?
I don't have a lot of free time, but I do appreciate the arts. Opera, symphony, ballet, fine art. If you look around, you'll see that we collect African art, for example.
Yes, it's very beautiful.
It is, Detective. It means a great deal to me.
Do you have a career?
A career? Being the head of the Getty family is a 24-hour-a-day job. We have many holdings and many responsibilities, financial and otherwise. The management of our business affairs and properties leaves me with time for little else.
Poor little rich girl?
Believe it or not, Detective, wealth does have its price.
Tell me about your family.
The Gettys? We're a very private family.
How many people are there in your family?
Well, my mother just passed away.
I am sorry.
So am I. She was a magnificent woman. We were very close. I was an only child.
And your father?
I never knew him.
It's hard to believe that any man would leave a woman like you. Or like your mother must have been.
He did not leave, Detective. But that's really none of your concern.
I'm sorry. Go on.
There are, of course, other Gettys in the city. I have a large, extended family.
I see. Do you have a husband? A boyfriend?
I'm very independent, Detective. The women in my family have always preferred it that way.
So, you've never been married?
No, and I never will be.
What about children?
Yes, that is likely. Someday.
I'd like to hear just about anything.
I do a lot of charity work around the city, primarily in the prison and reform system. I'm not a professional sociologist, but it does interest me.
I'd like to hear just about anything.
I have a business degree from Vanderbilt. I wanted to study psychology, but my family's interests came first.
Oh? Why not something like law, then? Surely that would have been an asset to the family.
Law? Please, I do have some morals, Detective.
I'd like to hear just about anything.
For the record, I'm 28, Detective.
I'd like to hear just about anything.
I have a few friends. A woman in my position can't really afford them.
I'd like to hear just about anything.
I try to stay away from the media as much as possible. Last year there was that story about John Kennedy Jr. and I. The phone didn't stop ringing for weeks. I prefer to keep my private life private. I would appreciate it if you would keep my name away from any public association with the police, Detective.
Of course. I'd like to hear just about anything.
I do a lot of charity work around the city, primarily in the prison and reform system. I'm not a professional sociologist, but it does interest me.
I wouldn't know where to begin.
As you wish, Detective.
Can you tell me anything about what happened out at the lake?
I wish I could, but I've never seen or heard anything unusual at the lake, and I do spend quite a bit of time out there.
Can you tell me anything about what happened out at the lake?
I wish I could.
Excuse me, but your eyes are really distracting. I don't think I've ever seen a color quite like that brownish gold. It's so deep and rich. Man, if I could bottle that, I'd make a fortune.
Thank you, Detective. That's an interesting observation, though probably not relevant to your case.
A good detective never knows what might be relevant, Miss Getty.
Then you must be truly exceptional at your job. I think this has gone on long enough. You're not really a detective, are you?
Who, me? Well, I am on this case, Miss Getty.
I saw you at the lake yesterday. I thought you must be with the police since you were there, but you don't act like a police officer. Besides, I'm rather certain that the other man said his name was Mosley.
All right, you caught me. I'm not with the police. My name is Gabriel Knight. I'm a writer working with Detective Mosley on a book.
Well, Mr. Knight, now that we've established who you are, perhaps you can tell me the real reason you're here.
Well, I am researching the book, and I thought you might have seen or heard something at the lake.
I don't like liars, Mr. Knight.
Okay, you're right. I really just wanted to see you again. You can be mad at me if you want, but I swear I've never done anything like this before.
Mr. Knight, you've lied about your identity and wasted my time with meaningless questions. If it weren't vaguely flattering, I'd really be angry. You're lucky I don't call the real police. I think you should go, Mr. Knight.
Malia, wait. If you just give me a chance.
I've wasted enough time. I'll have Robert show you out. Robert? Show Mr. Knight out, please.
I most certainly will. Thank you very much. I had a lovely time.
Ah, shit.
Welcome, my friend.
Hello?
I am the proprietor, Dr. John. If you have any questions, I will be happy to assist.
Great. My name is Knight, and I'll probably take you up on that.
The Historical Voodoo Museum is brimming with items authentic and original.
He's got more hair than Mosley. Reminds me of a book critic for the New York Times.
A street drummer has settled outside the museum. A very large, very formidable-looking snake is secured in a plexiglass cage. A striking portrait of a turbaned woman is on the back wall. A striking portrait of a turbaned woman is on the back wall. Gabriel wonders who she might be.
Could I ask you some questions?
That is why I am here.
What can you tell me about voodoo?
Historical voodoo? Or the voodoo currently practiced in the city?
Tell me about historical voodoo.
Very well. I will start at the beginning, Mr. Knight, and will go on from there at your prompting.
Sounds good.
As you may know, Voodoo is a grassroots religion formed by the mixing together of many different African tribal religions and Anglo religions, such as Catholicism or Protestantism. In other words, it is a religion born of the African slave trade, but African slaves were imported not only by the United States, but also into the West Indies, where the French and Spanish ran plantation islands. Prior to 1803, the New Orleans area was owned by France. The French Creole in those days owned many African slaves. But the Creole did not permit their slaves to gather, giving no chance for voodoo to breed here natively.
The Creole also knew enough about the corrupted pagan practices of the West Indies slaves to ban the importing of slaves from that region.
So, how did voodoo come to New Orleans?
After the Louisiana Purchase, American legislators relaxed regulations. Slaves were permitted to gather. The Americans also removed the ban on West Indies slaves.
Around the same time, a slave revolt occurred in Santo Domingo, what is now Haiti. Between the lifting of the ban and the Haitian revolt, West Indies slaves began pouring into New Orleans.
Some of them were free people of color, freed or escaped slaves. Some came with their white owners who were fleeing from the revolt.
What happened when the West Indies slaves got here?
They brought voodoo with them. The native slaves were more than enthusiastic about embracing it. It gave them power, Mr. Knight, if only in the form of a communal bond. Among the first meeting places were the Bayou Saint John and the shore of Lake Pontchartrain. The early voodoos were heavy snake worshippers, worshipping the one they called the Great Zombie.
Tell me more about historical voodoo.
By 1817, the voodoo activities were beginning to cause fear among the white slave owners. An ordinance was passed to forbid slave gatherings except in designated public areas at designated times. The time was Sunday afternoons and the place Congo Square. The slaves and free people of color gathered to dance simulations of their voodoo dances right in sight of Creole society. Of course, they also continued to meet in private for the real thing.
Tell me more about historical voodoo.
There were a variety of kings and queens at first, voodoo priests and priestesses. But from about 1830, a single power emerged. This was a voodoo queen named Marie Laveau. Marie Laveau ruled voodoo in New Orleans for many years.
Tell me more about historical voodoo.
I've given you as much detail as I can, Mr. Knight. Look around the museum if you desire more information.
Tell me about current voodoo.
Many people think of voodoo in terms of magic spells or gree-gree. That kind of practice is actually called hoodoo, and is only a part of true voodoo. Voodoo, the religion, has a strong following in New Orleans. In fact, it is growing quite rapidly. There are several voodoo churches or temples in the city, and others all across the United States. African Americans see it as a tradition all their own. Whites, and there are many in their religion, are attracted to it because they think it is exotic. I, personally, am more interested in the history of voodoo. Some of the new movements are copying Haitian or even African voodoo. But it is the voodoo of New Orleans that I find so intriguing.
Tell me more about current voodoo.
There are many voodooians in New Orleans. They often do business selling gree-gree, telling fortunes, providing luck, and occasionally misfortune. Perhaps you would like to meet a voodooan. We refer those who seek a deeper experience with voodoo to a local practitioner, Magentia Moonbeam.
Sure, I'd love to meet her.
She lives on the corner of Orleans and Dauphine. I will call her and tell her you might stop by.
Great, thanks. What do you know about the voodoo murders?
The killings in the newspaper? I know that they have nothing to do with true voodoo in New Orleans.
What do you think of New Orleans?
It is the only city in the United States as far as I am concerned.
What is it about New Orleans that you so admire?
It has a real culture of its own, Mr. Knight, amid the horrid blandness that is Americana. New Orleans alone has a voice.
Spoken like a true New Orleanian. Do you have anything else to say about New Orleans?
I have already given you my opinion, Mr. Knight.
Do you know anything about snakes?
Ah, you have perhaps noticed the museum's snake, Mr. Knight. They are beautiful creatures, do you not agree? And the tourists seem to associate them with voodoo.
Is the snake yours? Do you use it in your practice of voodoo?
I admire the spirit of the snake, Mr. Knight, but snakes like the museums can be quite dangerous to handle.
You didn't really answer my question.
I think I did, Mr. Knight.
I'd really like to know more about your snake.
There is really nothing more to say, Mr. Knight.
What can you tell me about St. John's Eve?
It is one of the important ceremonial nights in voodoo.
What else can you tell me about St. John's Eve?
I am afraid I do not know the origins of St. John's Eve. I only know that it was a night of ritual long before voodoo came to New Orleans.
What else can you tell me about St. John's Eve?
I am afraid I have little else to say about that subject.
Do you have any idea what Cabri Saint-Gor means?
I fear my French is not all it should be, Mr. Knight.
Have you ever heard of a Schottenjäger?
No, I have not.
Tell me more about Marie Laveau.
There were actually two Marie Laveaus, mother and daughter. Most people thought they were the same woman. Her continued youth added to the mystique. The original, the mother, was also known as Widow Paris. It was she that began the empire. When the Widow Paris began to practice, there were many voodooians in the city. By 1830, she was voodoo queen of all New Orleans.
Tell me more about Marie Laveau.
The widow Paris was a hairdresser for rich Creole ladies. She also paid household servants to spy for her. Between the two, she knew everything about everyone who mattered in New Orleans. She was not above using her information to appear psychic, to intimidate, or even to blackmail.
You sound as though you admire her.
For a black woman in the mid-1800s to gain power is an incredible thing, Mr. Knight, however she achieved it.
Tell me more about Marie Laveau.
She kept a pet snake, danced with it too. She held traditional voodoo ceremonies out by the lake. She took herself seriously, very seriously. But she was not above selling tickets for her events to curiosity seekers. She was not above using voodoo any way she could to make money, that is for certain. But if she had been in another line of work, in another age, that would have been interpreted as entrepreneurial genius rather than a sign of fraudulence.
Hey, you don't need to convince me. I admire anyone that can actually make a living. Tell me more about Marie Laveau.
It was Marie Laveau who defined the voodoo that is truly and uniquely the voodoo of New Orleans. She invented hundreds, if not thousands of spells, potions, charms, and incantations. These form the basis of the modern practice, not to mention the folk tradition of Hoodoo.
Tell me more about Marie Laveau.
Her daughter, Marie Glapion, took over when the widow Paris got old. Most people thought it was the same Marie Laveau. Both Maries encouraged that point of view. The widow Paris died in 1881. Marie Glapion had been reigning a long time by then. After the death of the widow Paris, other voodoo queens surfaced, and by 1890, the cult was fragmented again. Marie Glapion just sort of faded away.
Tell me more about Marie Laveau.
The Laveau tomb, where one or both of the Maries are believed to be buried, is in St. Louis Cemetery No. 1. It is a popular shrine for practitioners and tourists alike. I myself take tours through the cemetery on a regular basis.
Really? Do you have any running this week?
No, but the cemetery is open to the general public as well.
Tell me more about Marie Laveau.
You have heard everything about Marie Laveau that a layman might expect to understand.
Tell me about yourself.
Me?
Yes, if you don't mind.
What is it you wish to learn?
Why did you open a voodoo museum?
The subject has fascinated me all my life, and I wanted to help preserve the cultural heritage it represents.
What kind of background in voodoo do you have?
Let us say that I cut my teeth on it, Mr. Knight. It is in my blood.
Do you do anything besides run the museum?
No. The museum does not make me a rich man, but my material needs are simple. I prefer to focus on my one true interest in life.
What are your own religious beliefs?
My beliefs are too personal and too complex to discuss with a layman, Mr. Knight.
Just tell me anything.
I am originally from the West Indies myself, you know.
Really? What brought you to New Orleans?
I was drawn here for personal reasons.
Just tell me anything.
I am a vegetarian.
Really? I can't imagine living without meat.
That must be the hunter in you, Mr. Knight.
Just tell me anything.
I do not care for small talk, Mr. Knight.
Just tell me anything.
I am not an easy person to get to know. I am a very private man.
Isn't that unusual for someone in the museum business?
Not at all. My displays speak for me.
Just tell me anything.
Not everyone can come see the museum, so I occasionally do public speaking on the subject of historical voodoo.
Anything coming up that I might attend?
No. But then, you have me all to yourself right now, do you not?
Just tell me anything.
I am originally from the West Indies myself,
Really? What brought you to New Orleans?
I was drawn here for personal reasons.
Actually, I can't think of a thing.
Then, let us discuss something else.
Do you know Malia Getty?
Should I?
She referred me to your museum.
Many have read about our museum in the newspapers, Mr. Knight.
That's a good point. Are you sure you don't know Malia Getty?
Quite sure, Mr. Knight.
What exactly is hoodoo?
Hoodoo refers to magic folk traditions of the South. Hoodoo is a bastard of voodoo. Many of the Grigri are similar, but hoodoo does not have the religious aspects of voodoo.
Is there anything else I should know about hoodoo?
Not if your interest is primarily in voodoo. Hoodoo is of interest to those who study rural folk traditions, but it will not aid you in understanding true voodoo.
Is there anything else I should know about hoodoo?
Not if your interest is primarily in voodoo. Hoodoo is of interest to those who study rural folk traditions, but it will not aid you in understanding true voodoo.
A counter at the back displays brochures and a donation basket. A counter at the back displays brochures and a donation basket. An official voodoo wish and stump. Rub it and make a wish, a card say.
Funny, I say the same thing to women.
Even if that were for sale, Gabriel couldn't afford it.
I wish Malia Getty was permanently grafted to my thighs. Damn, I've always wanted a skeleton with a bowl on its head.
The back wall displays various voodoo items, such as an anatomically correct voodoo doll with pins strategically placed.
Now, why does that remind me of Grace?
That doesn't... The doorway is already open. On the table is a small coffin. So small, in fact, that it would only fit an infant.
Charming. This coffin is so small.
How observant of you, Mr. Knight.
Is it for dolls or something?
It symbolizes the afterlife. It is purely decorative, I assure you.
Huh. Imagine that. Goodbye, Dr. John.
Come back again.
The marks are reddish in color and reminds Gabriel of crosses. They look like they've been here a few days at least. Near the Laveau tomb is a piece of red brick. Undoubtedly a cast-off from spiritual graffiti writers. Food, trinkets, and more unsettling things have been left at Marie Laveau's tomb as offerings from believers. Food, trinkets, the tomb is securely closed. An old man tends the cemetery with movements akin to a slow drawl.
I'm sorry to bother you.
You got something to say, son?
Mind if I pick your brain a minute?
Go ahead. These folks ain't in no hurry.
What can you tell me about voodoo?
They say it was part of an old religion from Africa, brought here by slaves.
What can you tell me about voodoo?
I don't really care to talk about it. I don't do it none myself.
What do you know about the voodoo murders?
Ain't it just awful, them finding those bodies with voodoo things around them? I don't think there's any real voodoo going on. Somebody's trying to cover their tracks is all.
What can you tell me about New Orleans?
Seem like everybody want to visit New Orleans at least once in their lives. And they love the cemetery tour. I see tourists in here every day of the year.
What can you tell me about New Orleans?
There's lots of things to see here, but none are as beautiful as the St. Louis Cemetery number 1.
What can you tell me about New Orleans?
Hey, if you want to know more, you should ask somebody else.
What can you tell?
Hey, if you...
Do you know anything about snakes?
Snakes? I see snakes around here all the time. Most of them ain't poisonous, of course.
What's the significance of St. John's Eve?
Why, St. John the Baptist is the patron saint of voodoo. Sometimes we get some weird goings-on in that cemetery on that night. More often a few nights before. People taking grave dirt, bones, and more.
That's pretty disgusting.
Yep. Don't know what they do with them, but it can't be pretty.
What else can you tell me about St. John's Eve?
I told you all I know about that.
Do you have any idea what Cabri sans cœur means?
No, can't say that I do.
Do you know anything about Marie Laveau?
Sure. She was the voodoo queen of New Orleans. A powerful voodooine and a powerful sorceress. Believers still come to her tomb, you know. They write secret marks on the walls, leaving offerings back. Then there's the tourists. They come out of curiosity. As a matter of fact, that big Dr. John fella from the Voodoo Museum, he's here at least once today. But Marie Laveau's tomb ain't the only one the believers visit and make markings and leave offerings at.
What else can you tell me about Marie Laveau?
Her tomb's on all our tours. Even the Baptists come round here to gawk. Course, you may not know this, but some of the real serious voodoo types argue that she ain't in this one at all, but down in an unmarked tomb in number 3. It's all the same to me, I say. Save me a lot of cleanup work if she weren't here, if you ask me.
What else can you tell me about Marie Laveau?
Boy, go out and buy a book if you really want to know. I ain't too sure my facts these days nohow.
Have you ever heard the word Schottenjäger?
I don't know what you talking about.
Tell me about yourself.
My name is Toussaint Gervais. I'm the watchman here at St. Louis No. 1.
What exactly do you do here?
Oh, I keep the place tidy, but a big part of my job, too, is looking out for the grievers, you know. People come to pay their respects, and they need looking out for. Sometimes they so grief-bound they don't know what they doing.
Tell me about yourself.
That's about all there is to say.
You said there were other marked tombs?
Yep. I seen bull hearts left on tombs and a nest of vulture feathers, plates of peas and cornmeal, animal parts, human parts even, it looked like. Male parts, if you get my meaning. And this at one of the great family crypts, mind you. Odd how them types just pick a spot and stick to it.
What other tombs get marked? Can you show me?
No, I ain't one for naming names. I don't like to encourage that kind of thing. It's distressing to the families, and rightly so. Don't know how that sort of thing gets started. Why folks come to start leaving stuff at that one spot. But it happens all the same.
Tell me something about St. Louis Cemetery, No. 1.
You know why the dead are buried in tombs and not in the ground, don't you? The water table's too high. Them coffins would float right out of their graves. Them dead would go floating right down into the water. 'Course if it were Mardi Gras, nobody'd even notice.
Tell me something about St. Louis Cemetery, No. 1.
It's a historical place. People buried in here from the Civil War and back further too. Take a look around, you'll see.
Tell me something about St. Louis Cemetery, No. 1.
Just look around, You get the feel of the place.
The Wright family tomb. Several of Gabriel and Grant's family members are laid to rest here.
I want a copy of these strange marks.
The marble and granite tombs are quite heavy.
Welcome, Seeker. You must be the one Dr. John called me about.
I guess so. My name is...
Wait? Gabriel Knight?
You're too quick for me.
Actually, Dr. John told me. You have come to the right place, Mr. Knight. Tell me how I can help.
Could I ask you a few questions?
Of course, Seeker.
What can you tell me about voodoo?
My practice is mainly selling charms and potions with magic power, such as gree-gree and voodoo oils. You know, everything from unrequited love to wandering spouses to winning a lawsuit. But my spells and charms are powerful, and they work.
What can you tell me about voodoo?
Much of a voodoo yen's work is protecting her clients from the spell of others. I make special protective gree-gree to be worn in secret. They keep evil spells from working against my clients.
What can you tell me about voodoo?
The recipes for voodoo charms have been handed down from master to apprentice for centuries.
What can you tell me about voodoo?
I have told you all it is proper for you to know, Monsieur Knight.
What do you know about the voodoo murders?
Why, that has nothing to do with me and my clientele. But I can tell you that you should stay as far from it as possible. There is badness there. Very bad.
So you don't think the voodoo aspects of the case are fake?
Fake? Let me tell you about fake. If I get information through the grapevine and make use of it, is that fake? No, that is part of a voodoo yen's power. If people don't believe, there is not much I can do. But if they do believe, that is a part of my power too. But there are things, monsieur, things not even a little bit fake, I can tell you. Believe it or not, but stay away from it.
What can you tell me about New Orleans?
New Orleans is the center of voodoo practice in the United States.
What can you tell me about New Orleans?
It is a fascinating city with many dark secrets.
What can you tell me about New Orleans?
It is my favorite place in the world.
What can you tell me about New Orleans?
It is my favorite place in the world.
Do you know anything about snakes?
Snakes? You mean like my beloved Grimwald? She's a python, you know. Quite deadly in the wrong hands. I was trained by one of the great voodoo queens to learn how to hypnotize and handle snakes.
Tell me more about snakes.
Oh, I wouldn't want to give away my trade secrets.
About Grimwald.
What about her?
Where'd you get Grimwald?
She belonged to a traveling reptile show. She was being terribly mistreated, so I offered to buy her. She's named after a spirit guide I had once. The spirit Grimwald was a very powerful female snake priestess in Egyptian times.
Grimwald doesn't sound Egyptian.
I only know what the spirits tell me. Monsieur, I am sure they know better than we.
How'd you learn to handle Grimwald?
I told you a great voodoo queen taught me. She learned from Marie Laveau herself.
Ah, fascinating. Would you consider giving me one of Grimwald's scales?
No, I couldn't do that. You might do some gree-gree of your own, no? One must be very careful with such things. Hair clippings, nail parings, and snake scale.
How about showing me how you handle Grimwald?
Really? You would like to see me dance, perhaps?
That would be swell.
I won't make you wait, Monsieur Knight. No matter what you see, do not be frightened.
I'll give it my best shot.
Gabriel grabs the shed snake skin while Magenta is otherwise occupied.
They are truly inspiring, isn't it?
That's certainly one word for it. Could I ask you a few more questions?
Certainly.
What's the significance of St. John's Eve?
St. John's Eve? It is the greatest night of the voodoo year. There is always a traditional conclave on St. John's Eve. Most of our voodoo churches these days hold functions in the church hall, but in the old days, They had ceremonies out in the wild, and they wore animal masks and had a huge bonfire and dancing. I used to go when I was an apprentice, sometimes in the swamp, you know, Bayou St. John, sometimes at the Lake Pontchartrain.
What's the significance of St. John's Eve?
Special ceremonies are performed, and the Loa come to ride the faithful.
What's the significance of St. John's Eve?
There is no night more powerful to voodoo magic.
What's the significance of St. John's Eve?
There is no night more powerful to voodoo magic.
Do you have any idea what Gabriel sans cœur means?
No. No, I don't.
Do you know anything about Marie Laveau?
Oh, yes. She was the first of the great voodoo queens.
Do you know anything about Marie Laveau?
She ruled voodoo in New Orleans for 100 years, they say.
Do you know anything about Marie Laveau?
I'm sure a historian could help you with that, if you want to know more.
Tell me about the animal masks.
I saw them used once or twice when I was younger, but you don't see them much anymore. They are too close.
Too close to what?
Just bad karma.
Tell me about the animal masks.
I don't know what else to say about that.
Have you ever heard the word Schottenjäger?
I don't know anything about that.
Tell me about yourself.
Yes? What would you like to hear?
How'd you get into this business?
I trained in the voodoo arts for many years with the great Queen Tabitha.
Really? Who's she?
You have never heard of her? For shame! I can see you know little of the world of magic.
I'm beginning to get that impression, yes. What kind of people come to see you?
Seekers after the truth, such as yourself.
Do you do anything else?
I am a voodoo yen, and that is plenty. It takes much spiritual effort.
How many voodoo yens are there?
No one knows exactly. Many practice in secret. There are probably hundreds. But of course the level and the power of the voodoo yens differ greatly, depending on their training and natural gifts.
Tell me anything at all.
I haven't always lived in New Orleans. I came here from Kansas as a young woman.
Tell me anything at all.
I began studying voodoo more than 20 years ago. I am well versed in the magical art.
Tell me anything at all.
Many non-believers come to me. They are usually believers when they leave.
Tell me anything at all.
Dr. John sends me many seekers such as yourself.
Tell me anything at all.
I am happy here with my clientele and my snake.
Tell me anything at all.
I haven't always lived in New Orleans. I came here from Kansas as a young woman.
I can't think of anything.
Very well.
Give me an example of a gris-gris.
All right. Here's an old one. Take a lodestone and some brimstone to a crossroads at midnight. Light the brimstone with a match, and a spirit will come and give you advice in gambling.
Give me an example of a gris-gris.
Here's an old hoodoo Dr. Gree-Gree. Place a dime under your client's tongue, and if the client is under a spell of any kind, the dime will turn black.
Give me an example of a gris-gris.
To send someone away, take a rotten egg and write that person's name on it 9 times. You can also write on it where you want to send that person to. Take it and throw it against his door at midnight.
Give me an example of a gris-gris.
Here's a nasty one. To kill someone, get a sock or a shoe that belongs to that person, put graveyard dirt in it, and bury it under their front steps.
Does that work?
I don't know. I never tried it.
Give me an example of a gris-gris.
To ensure the safety of your child, cut a lock of its hair while it is still a baby and keep it with you. The child must have all its hair before it can die.
These are interesting.
They're very old. The gris-gris that I prepare is much more powerful, I can assure you, but I don't give out those secrets.
Give me an example of a gris-gris.
All right. Here's an old one. Take a lodestone and some brimstone to a crossroads at midnight. Light the brimstone with a match, and a spirit will come and give you advice in gambling.
Do these symbols mean anything to you?
Ah, the Voodoo Code. It is very secret, yes. I studied it with my mentor, the great Queen Tabitha.
Really? Great. Can you tell me what it says?
Let's see. Well, some of it is nonsense, I'm afraid. Whoever wrote this wasn't very good.
That's all right. Just tell me what it says.
It starts with a D and a J, and then... Okay, this part makes sense. It says, conclave tonight, bring... then there's more nonsense. F-W-E-T-K-A-S-H. Well, that last bit might mean cash. Fresh cash? It doesn't make much sense.
That's okay, thanks. DJ Conclave, K-A-S-H. It's a start.
I'm happy I could help.
Gabriel magnifies the scale from the lake. The iridescent scale is brilliantly hued with greens and purples. Gabriel magnifies the shed skin from Magenta Moonbeam's snake. The snake scales are hued brown. They don't match the scale from Lake Pontchartrain. Since Magenta has a snake, it might be the best not to discuss the snake scales with her. A large, sluggish snake rests on the floor of the fancy bird cage. It's a large cluster of quartz crystals. The Moonbeam residence looks like a cross between a voodoo temple and a Victorian fortune teller's parlor, by way of Haight Street. The mask is made of carved wood and looks African.
Please remain seated within the protective circle. There are spiritual currents in this room that I can't always control.
Thanks for the warning. Well, I guess I'll be going now.
Open your mind and heart, and the way will be clear to you.
I'll give it my best shot. Hello?
Bonjour, Monsieur Walker.
Oh, bienvenue, Madame Casino. Comment ça va? How you be feeling today?
Well, I'll tell you, Mr. Walker, I'm certain someone's buried a slip-knot bag somewhere near my steps. I haven't slept a wink in weeks.
Oh, don't that beat all? Well, you're gonna need some easy night candles then.
Do you think that would help? I do hope you're right. I said 3 rosaries this morning for Our Lady's intervention.
Rosaries are good, sure enough. But you burn those candles too, and you gonna whip any old no-sleep gree-gree, I tell you for sure.
Very well, Mr. Walker. Put them on my account and send them round to my house. Oh, and there's another thing. I didn't catch her at it, but I know Mrs. Lefebvre put stomachache powder in my tea at the last meeting of the Creole Grand Dames. Oh, I've been in misery.
You put 9 pinheads up in a little box, add a pinch of graveyard dust, and put it under her front porch step. That'll turn the trick back on Mrs. Lefebvre, and she'll be the one with the bellyache. I have the pins and the dust right here if you want 'em.
If the Blessed Virgin will grant me her protection, I'll be safe from these practitioners of evil.
Oui, madame. Though it don't hurt to be proactive none neither, now does it?
Naturellement, monsieur. Merci beaucoup.
Mais non, madame. It is nothing. Au revoir.
Au revoir, Monsieur Walker.
Can I ask you just a few more questions?
Whatever, man.
Do you know anything about animal masks?
Like the ones in the voodoo rituals they do for the tourists?
Right.
I used to sell a few as souvenirs. The only one left is Willie Jr. over there. The old crocodile. Well, he's sort of a mascot now, him.
Can you tell me anything else about how animal masks are used?
They're curiosities, no? This is a curio shop.
Oh, yeah. I keep forgetting. Can you tell me anything else about how animal masks are used?
They're curiosities, no? This is a curio shop.
Oh, yeah. I keep forgetting. About Willie Jr., would you be willing to let him go?
Maybe. For $100.
$100? You gotta be kidding.
Me and Willie Jr. are very close now. I could part with him for less.
Would you take 50 for Willie Jr.?
Don't insult me, monsieur. The price is $100.
Would you take 50 for Willie Jr.?
Don't insult me, monsieur.
That customer of yours, the little old lady?
Customer?
The woman I saw in here. Madame Cazeneuve, you called her.
I don't talk about my customers to men who come in off the street.
It's important that I talk to Madame Cazeneuve. You see, I'm doing some research and...
I can't tell you anything about her.
Tell me about yourself. How did you get into this kind of business?
Why should I discuss my business with you, man?
I knew you'd miss me, so I came back.
Oh boy, party time.